Good afternoon, everybody. It's Saturday here on the Lenny Melnick Network and on Facebook. And I'm Doug of the Dugout, and this is our Saturday show. I'm going to focus on waiver wires and talk a little baseball. I think the show's going to be a little shorter than in recent past, just because a lot of the good players that under 50% have graduated, so there's a lot fewer recommendations, and I'm not going to be the kind of person. I mean, I'll talk about some people that you might take up, but there's going to be strong recommendations, there's going to be soft recommendations, and a lot of these today are going to be soft, whereas last week there were a lot of good players that I actually really liked, like Nico Horner and J.D. Davis and Kyle Gibson and Danny Duffy. Those guys have all graduated over 50%, and, Nico Horner hasn't, but the rest of them have, and there's fewer people to talk about this week, but we'll talk about some of them as we get there. The first thing I'm going to do is a personal note. We're the first generation of fantasy baseball players that have been in leagues, for a very long time. And my home league, has been around since technically 1999, but really 2003 is when it kind of hit its stride. And the guy that I'm playing this week, turns out that he passed away. His name was John David Egan. I guess we're going to be at that point when we're going to have that sort of thing. I should have known someone was up when he didn't return my calls. He's a really nice guy. I'd often say he was the nicest Yankee fan I ever met. Always giving that kind of, "Oh, you got my guy. I hope he does well for you," kind of speech. The guy I could never be. I would always email things like, "I wish you luck this week," but I'd be insincere. That's my way of saying I'm thinking of you. I hope things go well, but I still want to beat you. When I started out in fantasy football, I used to write this newsletter, got passed around by a lot of people, and there was a commissioner's note. And, there's about 270 subscribers. And my sign-off line was always, "Good luck unless you're playing me." That was me. And every week I do this. I'll try to minimize the time where I'm not talking. I'll try to not clean my glasses more than 2 or 3 times during the show. I don't know if anyone's out here yet. I should actually put on the comments from this. You can join us at the chat room at Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports. I can put that on here. That's one of my banners. Show. Or you can join. You can join on the Facebook site, and the advantage of that is it has the capacity to let me print your comments online. We're 1 month in. I think it's been a great month for baseball, and we had no hitters thrown and incredible stories like Akil Baddoo and Yerman Mercedes, and great series between San Diego and Los Angeles. Sure, there have been injuries. Sure, there's been some disappointments. I'm sure people have been striking out at an incredible rate. But considering what we had last year, it's a boon. But here's the point when most of the questions that I'm getting asked via email or Twitter, and my Twitter is @UrbanBaboon. My email is urbanbaboon@gmail.com. Are, should I cut this guy? Should I cut this guy? Should I cut this guy? And, the general truth is anybody that you drafted in the first, anybody you drafted as a starter for your team should not be cut unless there is a standout reason for cutting him. You can cut Eloy Jimenez because he's not going to play this year more than maybe 3 weeks, and that's at best. But everyone else, it's like the thing goes that way. Like, right now, people are disappointed in a lot of people. And there's always been this saying in Roto that you should wait until Memorial Day weekend before you make any drastic cuts, because the truth is if you picked up a guy and you think he's a 275 hitter and he's hitting 205 right now, there's a good chance that he's going to hit 338 in May, and he's going to be around where you thought. Statistics need a little time to stabilize, and there's a lot of players who don't particularly play well in the cold weather in April. That's a very common thing. There are people that just have a worse April than the rest of the thing. Jose Abreu. We're talking about Luis Castillo. Corey Kluber, one of my favorites, always a bad April. But then they turn around and become the guy that you know and love and the guy that you drafted. So they're just going through this thing, and just the hitter side. On the pitcher side, it's a different story because you don't really want to cut anybody you drafted really high, but you could always bench a person, because I believe that outside of about 12, maybe 15 pitchers, you're trying very hard to protect your ERA and your WHIP. And so if you actually do have a lineup. Your pitcher's going with the lineup that you think is fairly poor, or your guy's coming off an outing where he's walked 6 batters and you're just not quite sure yet. There's nothing wrong with benching almost any pitcher for a game. But anyway, you have Christian Yelich, Cody Bellinger, Alberto Mondesi, Luke Voigt, and Mike Yastrzemski have all been a bit disappointing. Yastrzemski just went on the IL, but all those guys are on the IL. You should definitely not cut any of those guys. Things are going to change drastically in New York when Luke Voigt comes back, because I just saw today that they're batting Rougned Odor 4th. If you want proof that New York Yankees are not a very good team this year, you look no further than Rougned Odor batting 4th. The next set of people are people that have underperformed, but you draft kind of high. Anthony Rendon, you're not cutting. Marcell Ozuna, George Springer came back from the injury. He looked pretty good in his first night. DJ LeMahieu, they'll come around. Jose Altuve, the 2 guys I love are Teoscar Hernandez and Lourdes Gurriel. Gurriel was pressing our patience, but last week he's hit 350 with a couple home runs, so that stuff is there. Then you have the next set of people are people that are really good picks, but they're doing so poorly or something is messed up that you could probably bench them. And that's Gleyber Torres, Francisco Lindor. In one league where I have Lindor, I actually benched him last week. I had Xander Bogaerts as my middle infielder, so I moved him up to middle infield, and I was able to swing Ty France into my middle infield spot. So I thought that France and Bogaerts gave me a better chance than Lindor and Bogaerts, though Lindor is going to be good somewhere down the line, but that's the sort of thinking. Kyle Tucker's in this group. Those guys don't really belong. Austin Meadows and Mike Ford sort of belong in the previous group. They're just there's a little bit of curiosity on playing time with them. Charlie Blackman has been drastically disappointing. I actually could see cutting him in some leagues, but the names recognition's there. He's a better player than what he's showing. You probably should try to trade him first. Brandon Lau, Alec Baum, Dansby Swanson. Those are guys that probably should not be cut, except in the most drastic of situations. And we are talking in this show about the most common type of leagues, the 10 to 12 team, 23, 25, 26 man roster, where you're rostering around 300 players. And in a league wide, in a league with 300 players, you're going to be a little bit more cutthroat than you are in other situations. Like I had in a league where, I'm pretty packed at relief pitcher, but somebody cut Brad Hand for some unknown reason. And, I picked him up and I let Rafael Iglesias go, because even though Iglesias is a good reliever, didn't have room for that. I thought that it was an improvement, because that's the rule. You only cut somebody if you can put somebody better in your team. And that's the rule. If you can put somebody just as good, screw it. But if it's somebody better, that's a thing. So 3 guys in these top lists that are of very much concern. These are guys that in a 300-man team, a 300-man roster league, a shallow league, if you will, could very well be cut are Tommy Pham, Keston Hiura, and Kevin Biggio. Keston Hiura has been, what do you say? He's been taking a seat for Dan Vogelbach at first base the last 4 or 5 games. Tommy Pham has been outplayed by Jurickson Profar, and he's getting the nod out there. And the new one on the list is Kevin Biggio in Toronto. I brought up last week how he had made 4 errors in 16 games at third base, and it doesn't look like he's fit out for that. They have been benching him of late for Santiago Espinal, because he was a halfway decent hitter, but he can field the spot. And nobody's out there just yet. I did have this. The league leader in home runs right now has 9. It's tied between a few different players. There are only 3 players right now playing baseball that have more doubles than 9, which is kind of interesting. I heard someone say that the double is disappearing, and I looked it up, and I did some sort of things, and for me, there's this ratio of home runs to doubles that sort of happens, and there should be about 25 to 30% more doubles hit than home runs. one interesting thing is like about Babe Ruth is that Babe Ruth actually hit more home runs than doubles. And so there was in the thing they were saying that the new ball is sort of taking away the doubles. The truth is our double rate is at around 25%. The ratio of doubles to home runs is at 125%, and it's been lower than that in the past. So it seems to me that it isn't that the ball's taking away doubles. If anything, it's taking away extra base power as a whole, because the ratios seem to be pretty equitable to what they have been in the last 3 or 4 years. I didn't go into much more detail than that because once I have an idea and it's proven to be wrong, or it's proven enough to be wrong that I'm not going to go with it, then I just kind of let it go. Before we get started in the position stuff, I was trying to find where some of the top prospects were getting placed, and there was like 100 of them, and I didn't want to really fight through it. But I want to go through the three hitters that people have most rostered are Wander Franco, Bobby Witt, and Jared Kelenic. Kelenic and Franco are going to AAA. If they hit there, they're going to be up before you know it. Bobby Witt to AA, which kind of means he has one more step in between. So you could see Wander Franco in 30 days or less, Kelenic in 30 days or less, but Bobby Witt's probably 30 to 60 days. At first base, the news at first base. We're always going to start with first base for some reason. Seattle had put Evan White on the bereavement list on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He'd probably be back on Monday or Tuesday. Ty France got started first. I've been looking for France to gain more eligibility. That's his first start. I was hoping for him to get I guess first base is what's left. He's second base, third base mostly. The Tampa Bay activates Yoshi Tsutsugo, and they're playing him. They still got a problem with that when J-Man Choi returns. The Blue Jays option Rowdy Tellez with the bringing up of Teoscar and George Springer, which sort of makes sense. He's a young guy. He's got the options. He needs to get the reps, and Grichuk has played his way into center field. Miggy came back from a 10-day bicep injury. Some people say it's a phantom injury. I already mentioned that about Keston Herrera being benched. Washington was playing Ryan Zimmerman at first base in the games when they played the American League when they had the DH, and they put Bell at DH. Now today I see that Bell is being benched versus the lefties, which Zimmerman is really a good hitter versus righties, and I think that is something. And he's actually a pretty good hitter all in all. I think that you're going to see more and more of that, which diminishes Josh Bell's value in Washington. Ryan Mountcastle is slumping in Baltimore. I looked this one up because in my TFGVI league, somebody cut him. He's probably the most notable guy to be cut. And that's the other thing you're going to wind up in with about a month into the season is you're going to wind up into a situation where there are going to be some notable players being cut. I mentioned Brad Hand in one league. Sonny Gray was cut in another league. And Ryan Mountcastle was probably the three biggest players in leagues I've played in, and I've been able to get one of them. And the manager in the Orioles says that the best thing for him is for him to play through it and figure out how to overcome the problem, which bodes well for him getting the opportunity. Now, it also feels like one of those things where the manager gives the guy the vote of confidence just before they make a move. And the honest to God truth is that in 5 or 6 days, definitely in 10 days, the option of sending him down to the minors, letting him get reps there is a thing. But I don't see myself. I'm not going to bid a ton on Ryan Mountcastle league. I'll probably throw out it's $1,000 league. I'll probably bid like 50, maybe 52 as a keep it modest bid. I expect he's going to go for much higher than that. In Minnesota, Alex Kirilloff has played 2 games at first base. Going today, he'll be his third. Matt Olson missed 2 games of the A's after hitting something in the eye during batting practice. There's no fracture, but a pretty serious black eye. Moreland has shifted to first base, Lauer to DH, and Kemp got the start at second base, so created time for Tony Kemp. J-Man Choi is set to rehab at Durham, and that means that he's not that far away. That's what I wanted to say about this. Could impact Mike Brousseau, Yoshisugo, Yandy Diaz, Joey Wendell, a lot of these guys, depending on where they put J-Man Choi in it. And J-Man Choi is not just a fan favorite, he's a team favorite. So which brings me to the guys at first base that I could recommend. And you're going to see a lot of names here that were already here before, and like I said, people have been graduating. CJ Cron is now 50% owned. And this week the people that rostered him were given 4 home runs and a 349 batting average, which the batting average won't stay, but he should be owned. The 3 guys that I mentioned last week, Brandon Belt, still hitting the ball well. I know the overall batting average is 212, but he's got 4 home runs, 2 stolen bases, and his playing time is increasing. The guy they were splitting time with was Darren Ruff, who's not hitting well. I know he hit a walk-off home run about a week ago, but the guy's batting under 100. Joey Votto, still a guy, 5 home runs. Mitch Moreland, he stepped up. He's hit 250 with 33 home runs. I think he's a much better. The one guy that has played himself in this contention is his first base outfielder of the Arizona Diamondbacks, Pavin Smith, he's hit a couple home runs this week. I would actually put him at the back end of those 3. Still my favorite guy at first base. My recommendation for shallow leagues is Brandon Belt. In the deeper leagues, you're kind of more stuck because there's not as much available. The one guy that's still available that can produce really good numbers for you is Mitch Moreland, and that's my recommendation for deeper leagues at first base. I always want to mention a few other guys. I mention a lot of guys in passing because they may not be available in your league. And so if you're looking for just what is a decent player to fill the spot, that's Asdrubal Cabrera. I'm sometimes down on players like this, but he'll give you enough that it won't kill you. I just don't think he's the kind of guy that you want to roster as your first baseman if you're planning on really competing. But if he's just filling the spot to Luke Voigt returns or filling the spot to Cody Bellinger returns, something like that, he's perfectly amenable. He's my second guy. And then, I've talked to Andrea and stuff. There are a couple. Why not? Albert Pujols is having a pretty decent little stretch, and it might be the last decent little stretch of his career. Why not pick him up for a little while? Have him on your team when he moves into third place on home runs or whatever. He's not gonna, what you're gonna get from him. The one thing that that the Angels were always adamant about, and this still is true, when everyone was saying that Pujols was not worth his contract, which he may not be, was that he was still, when the cards are on the line, when they're running in scoring position, he still hit a lot more like the old Albert Pujols of old. And so you throw in the fact that he's hitting 200 with 5 home runs, and he's gonna get you some RBIs. If you're in a situation where you really need somebody in a league with 400 to 450 players already taken, I could see picking him up. I wouldn't take him over Moreland, but I'd take him over pretty much. I could see taking him over the other guys. I don't know if I would, but Pujols is Pujols. Miggy Cabrera is Miggy Cabrera. There are some guys who just deserve our respect. So that's it. So to recap, first favorite recommendations, Brandon Belt for shallow leagues, Mitch Moreland for deeper leagues. CJ Cron if he's still around. At second base, the 2 guys that in shallow leagues that I need to point out are Nick Madrigal and Nico Horner again. Nick Madrigal they're similar type batters because they can hit the ball well, and over the last 2 weeks, Nico Horner's been hitting 310 with an 877 OPS. I bring that up because Nick Madrigal is at 316 with a 790 OPS. The difference in the OPS is that neither of them hit home runs, but Nico Horner is hitting extra bases. And my belief is that those extra bases are going to turn into a handful of home runs. I think that Horner will have more home runs than Madrigal, and I think Madrigal will push 10. They both are stealing bases a little bit. They both had 1 this last 2 weeks. The other player that is way up there. Well, 2 guys that graduated last week were recommendations for Colton Wong and Jed Lowry. If they're only in the 50s, if they're available, I really like Colton Wong a lot. I like Jed Lowry a bit. Then there's Josh Rojas is available at 10. Matter of fact, his name will come up a lot because he's available at 3 or 4 different positions. And Kiki Hernandez is available at 46. He's been taken in 46% of leagues. He's not a bad player. He's going to lead off for that guy for the Red Sox. It looks like they're really sold on him playing center field, which is kind of amazing in my mind. But he's been playing center field and batting first more often than not. In the deeper leagues, Josh Rojas is the pick there at 32. He's at 30% owned in NFC. After you get past him, there's nobody I really, really want. You're looking at players that, like, even Kiki Hernandez is owned more than that. You're looking at players like Christian Arroyo and Pat Valaika. Oh, I didn't go through the news on this stuff. Well, that's a preview, and I'll give you my final verdict after I talk this thing through. Reds play Jeff India on the IL with undisclosed ailment. When it's undisclosed, more often than not, it's COVID. If it's not that, it's mental. Otherwise, we don't really know. But he'll be back sometime. They actually played Nick Senzel at second base, a game in there. Houston activated Jose Altuve this week. On Wednesday, the Dodgers activated Gavin Lux, gave him another start at shortstop, so he might be getting that eligibility. Those recalled Pat Valaika, who's a deep guy that I like a little bit. I don't really know why. I just look at his stats all around. He's a guy I wish would get a chance to play somewhere, and I thought he was going to get in Baltimore. You should look up on Major League MLB.com. Look up Pat Valaika, find out what his nickname is. And then if you tweet that to me, you'll get a prize. I don't know what that prize will be. Baltimore did send Galvis to the IL with sore adductor and groin string. Vilka played all 4 games, 2 at second base, 2 at short. Arizona, with Calhoun going out, Arizona has solidified Josh Rojas' space, but also as Josh Van Meter has been playing at second base and batting second. He's the guy that he's going to lose that time when Marte gets back, and Marte should be back mid-May is what they're saying. Miami has brought Ison Diaz in to be the guy who fills in for an injured Jazz Chisholm Jr. And they just put Ison Diaz right at the top of the lineup today. If you haven't noticed, you go to the tweets. Jazz Chisholm tweeted, "Has 10 days passed yet?" I think he's aching to come back. So I don't know how long it's going to be. Is there a possibility that Rojas has played pretty well at shortstop? I don't know. I guess Brian Anderson's still hurt, so maybe there's a spot where all 3 of them could play for a little bit, but I don't think Ison Diaz is a long-term thing, a long-term situation. In Boston, Marwin Gonzalez is the guy getting a start at second base, or Arroyo. Neither of them are any good. It wouldn't shock me if he's a guy that just need home runs and can't do much. Michael Chavis gets called up before too long. Marcus Semien of the Blue Jays, after a good start and people being out, was batting second or first, is now dropped in the 6th, 7th of the lineup. So back to that. Nico Horner gets my number 1 pick out of the second baseman in the shallow leagues, and Josh Rojas in the deeper leagues. Though Nick Madrigal was a guy, I don't understand why he's dropped so far down to 49% owned in Yahoo. He was a guy that I was targeting in all my drafts, and I wasn't able to get him because as much as I liked him, somebody liked him more. And it's not like he's not doing what you expect. For some reason, people have gotten down on. That's what I'm going to talk about. They've gotten down on somebody, and they say this phrase like empty average. No one says empty home runs or empty steals. Empty average is still a stat. Empty ERA. Anyway, off to shortstop, which is short. I don't see anyone in here. There's somebody watching this, so that's good. Don't know who it is. A couple people in there listening. It doesn't really matter. Oh, it's about John Egan passing away. He's one of my 21 subscribers. So either I have one less subscriber or I have one subscriber in perpetuity because no one's ever going to unsubscribe that one. So I got that going for me. Anyway, at shortstop, Philadelphia put Didi Gregorius on the COVID list on Friday. Who knows when he'll come back? Could be as soon as whatever. Jazz Chisholm was on the 10-day with hamstring strain. Early in the week, Andrelton Simmons returned from COVID in the shortstop, and Nico Horner dropped 8th in the lineup with Rizzo and Contreras leading off. He did get a start in the outfield, so there's even that coming on. I think that long term, I still believe that Horner is going to be the leadoff guy for the Cubs. I say that because their best lineup has to have somebody at the top that isn't a swing and miss guy. They have to get guys on base, and this is the guy that's going to get on base with the most regularity on that team. So there are some more interesting guys. Nico Horner and Josh Ross we already mentioned. Andres Jimenez has been getting the playing time in Cleveland. He's dropped in there 50%, 49%. His batting average isn't anything to get excited about, but he's a guy that will steal you bases. He's more of a guy that you want in roto than in head-to-head. And then Jose Iglesias this week hit a home run and stole a base. I'm probably the only guy saying that Jose Iglesias is a guy, but those are the two guys in deep leagues that I would recommend. Jose Iglesias, who's 25% owned in NFBC, and Josh Rojas is 46% owned. On the third base side, it's still Nico Horner, but there's a couple other options. In the deeper leagues, there's a couple names that you should be familiar with. One is Nick Maton of Philadelphia. He's hit fairly well, spelling Gene Segura, and there's talk that they might try him out in the outfield when everyone's healthy, because he's got the speed to play center field. Who knows if that's true or not, but they want to try to keep his bat in the lineup. The other one is that Santiago Espinal of Toronto. He's going to get more and more playing time. He's not a bad little hitter, and he's in the Blue Jay lineup is one that's going to score some runs. So he's somebody that in deep leagues might be worth something in that thing. At third base, J.D. Davis, who we recommended, left last night's game with a left hand sprain. And the Mets also put Luis Guillorme on the 10-day with a right oblique sprain, which this really means that we've been saying about Villar playing. Villar came in and played third base last night, and he hasn't stolen a base yet, but you still believe that that's the guy that you want and the guy that will steal your bases, even though it may not have happened yet. Early in the week, the Angels activated Anthony Rendon. Moustakas returned from injury on Tuesday. Nick Senzel started at second base Friday. They're looking at ways to get Naquin and Senzel in together. And Lux played a second game at shortstop. So, yeah, third base, who's out there? Once again, Nico Horner's name comes up. But one other name in the shell leagues that can't be dismissed is Evan Longoria. He's owned in about 31% of Yahoo leagues. And it looks like whatever renaissance that we expected we're seeing out of Pujols, Longoria is actually doing better. He's hitting the 290s. He's got an OPS in the mid 900s, 4 home runs already. He's hard to keep out of lineup. I know that they went out of their way to pick up Tommy La Stella, which kind of crowds their infield. But I think the odd man out is going to be Wilmer Flores, believe it or not, because he just doesn't field the position well. Whereas Longoria is hitting and he fields third base, maybe not as well as he did 7 years ago, but better than a lot of players. Certainly better than Kevin Biggio. So in the deeper leagues, there's just a lot of schlock there. You better hope you have a third baseman. There's not a lot to choose from. Everybody is either hitting really, really poorly or is somebody that only plays part-time. There are a bunch of guys that are 0% owned that I would make mention of. Brad Miller of the Phillies, Eric Sogard of the Cubs, Matt Duffy of the Cubs, Charlie Culberson, Brock Hull of the Rangers. Brad Miller at 0% owned, if you're in a pinch, he's the best of this bunch. I'm not going to go and say I recommend you take this guy, but he's hitting reasonably well. He's actually, people say that he's got the capacity. He's on my list of people who've hit 30 home runs in the past. When someone got injured, they said that the time is going to get split between Miller and Maton. So Miller's on the tongue of the managers. He's the guy. Eric Sogard always he's not only hitting fairly well for the Cubs, but he actually has that one stolen base, that tantalizing stolen base. And last time he had a full season, he stole like 12 bases. So that was only, the year before COVID. So that's the tantalizing thing. If a guy steals 12 bases, it can make up for a lot of other shortcomings. So my recommendation on the short leagues is still Nico Horner, but don't forget even Longoria. And for the deep leagues, take a look at Brad Miller. Another guy is Santiago Espinal, who we talked about before. He's not third base eligible yet, so he will be in 10 games. Now outfield, there's always a lot more going on in the outfield, and we added another watcher on the Facebook site. Hello to you all. A lot of stuff going on here. This is the one that usually takes the most time. We're doing really good on time. Brandon Nimmo left last night game with a finger contusion. Hard to ID the instance that caused it because it was something before the at-bat, or Pilar and Almora came into center field. Pilar came in first, and then when G. Davis went down, they did a double switch, and Almora came in second. I'd love to see Almora get one last shot. But who knows what they're going to do there. Both Pilar and Almora are very good defensive center fielders. Arizona, Josh Rojas started his 5th game in right field, so in the out leagues he has outfield eligibility now. He really goes 5. He'll probably get even more because it seems to be where he's playing. They do have injuries to Marte Locastro and Calhoun, which has kept him in the lineup enough for him to turn things around, even though he wasn't hitting well in the first 2 weeks of the season. Atlanta outfield spot with the Guillermo Heredia, who is now hurt. And they recalled Christian Pache up. Another one of my, talk about death too much nowadays. Another one of my favorite fantasy baseball guys who passed in the offseason. He would constantly tell me how he thought Drew Waters was better than Christian Pache, and I keep thinking that myself. So Pache's got another shot. He played himself out of center field. He gets to try it again. If he doesn't do it, like I said, in 5 days he can be sent down and he can try to work on his hitting. I like Drew Waters. In Chicago, it looks like Jake Marisnik has taken away center field duties from Happ. So Happ's another guy that I wouldn't have problem cutting in a shallow league, and deeply can't do it. But if you're not playing, you're not playing. Marisnik is not good enough to really consider rostering in those kind of leagues. Chris Bryant has started today. He will start his 10th game in the outfield and develop eligibility at third base and outfield, which is great for certain leagues. I know that covers NFBC in those leagues because I drafted him in my best ball, figuring he could play third base and outfield. Because one of the things about best ball leagues is you want to have guys that move around a little bit to give them opportunities to play. I saw one team, one of our guys actually drafted 3 DHs. And I'm like, I can see drafting 2 DHs, but they don't play anything else. And I actually can't really see drafting 2 DHs. Ramil Tapia sat twice a week versus lefties. He started once in the last. Colorado's faced 6 lefties this year. Tapia's only started one of those, though he is hitting 357 the past 2 weeks with 3 home runs and 1 stolen base on the year. So he's doing in the ballpark what you want. I just think that's I think he'll play enough because he's going to play versus all the righties and not playing versus lefties if he's actually not that good at it. And the Rockies have historically not been that good at hitting lefties. It might actually benefit him to play 4 good days versus 4 good days with 1 bad one. Because what you're looking for him is batting average and stolen bases. Charlie Blackman has dropped down to 5th or 6th in the order. That is a mighty good player who's fallen a good deal. Sam Hilliard, their center fielder, a lot of people got demoted. Looks like Garrett Hampson has moved to the infield, and Yohan Daza is their center fielder. In Miami, Evan Duvall started 4 games in center field. I think people don't realize that Duvall's a pretty decent fielder. Not a great fielder, but he's a decent fielder. The output from Mingers, Sierra, and Lewis Brinson hasn't been that good. Corey Dixon sat last night after leaving the game Wednesday in the 4th with a groin, though you've seen shagging flies in the warm-ups. If Corey Dixon's supporting you, he's probably not going to miss more than today. He'll be back by Monday, save for next week. Bryce Harper missed the past 3 games. After taking a 97-mile fastball from Justin Cabrera, pitched to the face. That was kind of ugly, wasn't it? I talk about the hate in the world this year. Like, I saw a bunch of people who wrote things like he deserved it. But that is the worst thing. You don't want anyone to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt by a pitch, but those things do happen. Pittsburgh Phillip Evans started 10 games in the outfield on Friday, so he's outfield eligible now, which is something we told you was going to happen. Interesting, I was looking at fielding metrics, and There's only four. There's only three players that have five outs above average, and then four is the next grouping. And Phillip Evans is actually a 4 outs above average fielder. Kind of amazing. The five fielders are God, I always get the Mats confused. The third baseman on the A's, that's Matt Chapman. Tommy Edman. And God, I don't know why I don't remember the third one. But anyway, St. Louis. Harrison made a return to center field on Friday. Carlson moved to right. Justin Williams dropped out. In Washington, Juan Soto is eligible to come off the IL, but hasn't passed throwing tests. So the swing is fine. Yadiel Hernandez is the beneficiary of time. Yadiel Hernandez is a pretty interesting guy. He's somebody that I'm going to recommend in deep leagues. If there was a real path to playing time, I'd recommend him across the board. He got signed by the Washington Nationals as a 20-year-old rookie coming out of the Mexican League, but he's a Cuban national. And that's the kind of thing that Cubans used to have to do before there was the change in policy during the Obama administration, is that you couldn't defect straight to the United States to play baseball. You'd have to defect to another country, and then through our treaties with Mexico, you could come and play baseball. That's what Aroldis Chapman did. That's what most of them did. And but when he defected to Mexico, he stayed in Mexico, played there for 8 years, was a pretty decent player. Didn't have those kind of like eye-popping numbers, like, he wasn't a guy who hit 40 home runs or whatever, but he ran a little. He was hitting 20. He was hitting in their league. They play shorter leagues. He was hitting that 15 to 20 home runs, which would come out to like 20 to 25 home runs to us. And he was batting about 300. So he was pretty decent. But as of this week, this last week, he hit 600 with a 14-11 OPS, 1 home run, 3 runs and 3 RBIs, stolen base. In spring training, he had 15 hits in 52 at-bats. Is that right? Sorry, that's wrong. He had 15 hits, 2 home runs, 5 doubles. He hit 469 with a 1.219 OPS. That's the thing. There's a lot to like there when you dig into that stuff. I wish, he's one of those situations. One of the reasons I've been down on Jock Peterson is because they had a better player that could play left field, and that was Nico Horner. These guys signed Kyle Schwarber. I'm not sure if this is a good player. The one drawback on Yadiel Hernandez is he's got a little trouble with launch angle. But if somebody were to take a little time and show him something as a coach, his ground out to air out is always been around 2. It's a lot of ground balls. So you need to learn to loft things a little bit. But other than that, he could be a pretty good player. Hits the ball hard. Everything else looks good about him. Just playing time. And the Nationals have no problem sliding in, batting second in his time replaced for Soto. In Cleveland, Jordan Luplow has started 5 of the last 6 games versus righties. And he's actually hitting better versus righties than versus lefties, though he's not particularly hitting great versus either. 208 versus righties, 188 versus lefties. And he's hit 3 home runs versus righties, so that's probably why they're seeing it. As long as they don't have any better options, they may as well play him on both sides, because at least he gets those home runs. Ahmed Rosario played his 10th game in outfield on Monday. He's at 11 as of yesterday. Akil Baddoo of Detroit has been slumping. He's dropped down to the 8th or 9th position. And they've had Harold Castro batting second for some unknown reason. I still believe in Baddoo, but he is definitely worth benching at this point in time. If there's a better player to pick up, go ahead and do it. In a 10-team league, there probably is. In a 12-team league, it's a maybe. 15, probably not. What he's doing wrong is correctable, because it's really outside of the norm, is that he has never really been an undisciplined batter at the plate. He's had low batting averages before, and that's something we thought would happen. And when we predicted him before the season, we said this is a guy that might steal you 10 to 15 bases, hit you 15 to 20 home runs, but the batting average would probably be around the 240s. And I still think he's on pace to do that, provided he can find the playing time, and he has to work something out. He can't be sent down because he's Rule 5, so he's got to work it out in the majors. And that is Or maybe they could trade somebody to the Twins. In Los Angeles, Ohtani played a few innings, well, one inning in the outfield. Wouldn't it be great if Ohtani had a position? Like Yerman Mercedes, if he had a position? But we can always hope. Five starts gets you to it in Yahoo. You need 10 games played. So he's a long way away. But it's worth noting. Max Kepler returned to right field from injured list Friday in Minnesota. Aaron Judge returned from 2 days off with mysterious lower body issues with 2 home runs. And Boone was vague on injury. Judge has only played 60% of his games in the last 3 years. I think we all knew he was injured, but we should probably expect not for him to miss, 50 games in a row, but for him to miss, 5 games here, 2 weeks there, 3 games here, so that he's not going to be playing more than about 60% of the games, and we should adjust our expectations down accordingly. In Oakland, Stephen Piscotty started 6 of the last 7 games, including with Seth Brown, but in a kind of fluke, Oakland played 5 lefties in that span. I still would prefer Seth Brown. Mitch Haniger returned Friday after 2 days off. They said no significant injury. They said he was fatigued. Yeah, it's interesting, huh? Toronto, Springer and Hernandez returned. It will be important to note that part of the reason why Tellez got sent down is because Springer did play DH, and I guess they're trying to keep Grichuk in the outfield and prolong Springer's health and happiness. A lot of notes on the outfield, but there are some names in there that are fairly interesting. And in the shallow leagues, in the IO leagues, I mentioned Remiel Tapia, somebody like before the season. He's only in 36% of leagues, and Brandon Belt has outfield eligibility. He's only 14%. But the 2 guys I want to mention, the number 1 guy is Tyler O'Neill at 21%. The guy he's always been fast, but he's just starting to steal bases, trying to figure things out, and he's at that age where he may have done that. I very well could be, saying in 4 weeks that he's played himself out of that position, but O'Neill is always a really good talent, hits the ball extremely hard, can hit for power, and even though he didn't really steal bases, he had the speed to do so. So Tyler O'Neill at 20% is the one guy that there's no doubt that this week he's doing well enough. Over the last 2 weeks, he's been hitting 355 with 4 runs and 2 stolen bases. That's good enough to start in any league in the world. Can he keep that up? I don't know, but there is the possibility. He was one of the top prospects in the Seattle organization, and I know how Seattle fans that I knew were sad when they got Marco Gonzalez for him, because they thought this guy was going to be something big. But even though Seattle didn't trade him because they didn't like him, they traded him because they had a number of outfielders that they liked in their system. They just got Klenick from the Mets, Julio Rodriguez, that sort of thing. So they figured they might turn one into a pitcher, and Marco Gonzalez has been a good pickup for them. And so far, Seattle's won that trade. So in the shallow leagues, I'm recommending Tyler O'Neill. In the deeper leagues, you get a lot of weirder names. Josh Ross appears again. If he's available, he's the guy you should take, 32%. He's the clear number 1 guy. The number 2 guy for me is Mike Tauchman. Mike Tauchman recently got traded to the San Diego Giants from the Yankees, and he sort of reinvented who he was in New York after not hitting well in Coors Field with Colorado. And he's fast enough to play center field. He's a Gold Glove caliber left fielder. But he's fast enough to play center field. And that's the thing that they're always hurting for, is that kind of production out of center field. And they seem to not really, the Giants don't seem to like Slater. I could see even when he's healthy, this guy being a big part of their offense. And even when he's not hitting, he's going to be stealing you bases. So I'm putting in a fair amount of money for him on the thing, because Josh Ross is not available, only guy playing, though he is available in 30%. Mike Tauchman has been rostered in 5% of the leagues. The other names, I think Yadiel Hernandez is a good stopgap, especially if you're looking for fill-in for Juan Soto, because it matches up perfectly. These aren't guys that I would fully recommend, but they're guys that if you're desperate, I can still think of Jonathan Daza He's won the center field job in Colorado. He's 17% owned. He will hit 300 in that lineup. He bets in a situation where he'll either get runs or RBIs because they're going to score runs. The Rockies, even in their bad years, have always been one of the top 5 or 6 teams in runs scored. Carl Garlick has returned for the Minnesota Twins. I don't really see what they see in Garlick, but they like him well enough, and he has been producing this year. And so that's a stopgap player. Tyrone Taylor in Milwaukee, Seth Brown in Oakland. So those are the names. So my recommendations are Tyler O'Neill in shallow leagues, Josh Rojas in deep leagues, though Josh Rojas could be on both sides. The other guy is Alex Kirilloff, which the upside of Alex Kirilloff is very, very high. If he's available in your league and you have space, you should pick him up. He's a must-add. I know that the great line from Lenny Melnick is a rookie. But I always say my corollary is, except when he's not, because occasionally 1 out of every 15, well, it's probably more than that. 1 out of every 15 performs like a superstar right out. 3 or 4 out of every 15 perform adequately to be rostered in fantasy leagues. And you may as well take your chance if you have the availability and it doesn't cost you much. So those are my recommendations. Tyler O'Neill, Alex Kirilloff, Josh Rojas, Mike Tauchman. At catcher, I said I don't want to talk about this much, but boy, do I have notes on catchers. Travis d'Arnaud went to the IL last night with a thumb issue. They said Sinker says it's not good, which brings up William Contreras and Alex Jackson. Wilson Contreras, so the Cubs sat out on Saturday with thigh tightness, sat out today. Contreras is good enough that if you went to the IL, even if you didn't to an IL, I might consider rostering 2 catchers in a 1-catcher league for a little while. I do want to cut that guy. d'Arnaud hasn't done enough yet. I know he was cut in one of the leagues that I am in, and I'm considering picking him up, but it's only because of somebody else that is about to be named. The Padres activated Austin Nola on Thursday, but he hasn't played. It's crazy. They where is this here? So Nola's returned. The option Campusano and Victor Cañas played both games, and it appears that much like I talked about Profar winning out over Pham in San Diego, Caratini is very much loved by their pitchers, and he's going to get time played, and he's the guy that you'd want out of Caratini or Nola. At least that's what it appears to at this juncture. I'm still going to give it a week, see how Austin Nola rolls in. If Austin Nola rolls in, I mean, Caratini's been hitting okay. He's hitting like 260 with a home run and a few RBIs. That's perfectly okay for a catcher. But if Nola can hit 300 with 3 home runs, they're going to find the mix might change. So it's still a wait and see for a little bit. But it does seem to me that that if things go the way they're going right now, that Caratini will have more playing time than Nola. The LA Angels activated Max Stassi on Thursday. The D-Mex activated center field, outfield, catcher, outfielder Dalton Varsho. They're looking for outfield depth. He hit pretty well last year down the stretch, which made people salivate at him with catcher eligibility, but he did not hit well at all, and he hasn't been swinging a bat anywhere except for in those other games. So maybe there's something there, maybe there isn't. I would say that I probably would not pick him up, but if he had a hot start, a good 2 or 3 games, I would jump, because that means that he did something in that mystery thing that they call alternate site. On Wednesday, Yadier Molina went on a 10-day with a right foot strain. JT Realmuto was scratched to the soreness in his glove hand, which he took a wild pitch off of. He felt it at batting practice. Zach Collins of the White Sox has caught 8 games, where Yermin Mercedes has none. There was discussion a little bit about what are the Sox going to do when they visit a National League ballpark and they have to ditch the DH, and because Yermin Mercedes is not a really good fielder, they thought about maybe making him first baseman, but you're going to bench, no matter how good Yermin Mercedes has been, are you really going to bench him? Are you really going to bench Jose Abreu for him? So I would bet that you're going to see them try to get his bat in by playing him at catcher. And he may not catch the whole game, but if he gets the starts, that means that he could get catcher eligibility before, by July. But we'll see the first time that happens. I do not see them benching Abreu for him. In New York, catcher Kyle Higgy-Shioka has caught 3 of the past 6, while Sanchez caught 3 of 6. The pitchers clearly prefer Higgy, and he's a guy that I would recommend picking up because it seems like he can hit. I understand the drafting of catcher Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has dropped in the batting order to 7th. With Willie Calhoun coming back, he's taken over the top of the lineup. The one interesting guy that I'm going to look at here is that, and I promise never to talk too much about catchers, but Mike Zunino hit 2 home runs to get to 5. We talked about guys who are kind of just home run guys like Pujols, and I'd much rather have Pujols if he was a catcher than he was a first baseman. And I think that Mike Zunino is a stud when it comes to fielding behind the plate, and if he can hit the home runs, which he certainly can, he can hit 20-some home runs. He's done it in the past. The problem with him is his batting average, but because he's a career 200 hitter. But if he can hit, right now he's hitting 216. If he can hit 216, that's only 16 1,000th off of the league average because people aren't hitting anymore. And I think he's somebody that needs to be reconsidered. I'm really considering dropping Tom Murphy, though he did a little bit this week to make me go, but Zunino might be the pickup there. So when I get to the recommendations there, that's what I'm going to tell you about. On the short side, Alexander Kirk is only 10% of the league. He's starting to heat up at the plate, and when he's hitting, he's definitely a rosterable in 12-team one-catcher leagues. William Astudillo, 10%. He's the kind of guy that I would pick up to fill in for Darren Ode or Real Muto or Contreras for a game. In the deeper leagues, Victor Caratini's owned in 54%, so that's beyond the pale. If he's available, I would pick him up. But if not, Kyle Higgy-Shioka, Mike Zunino, and William Contreras and Alex Jackson both can hit for the Braves. I think William Contreras is a better fielder. He'll get more of the times, so he might be a deep league pickup. And so my recommendations are in shallow leagues for catcher, Alexander Kirk. In deep leagues for catcher, I'm recommending Mike Zunino, based on it being a home run play. If you're fighting out in the average, meaning you're in the middle of the pack, you probably don't want to do it. But if you're near the top of the pack and it won't hurt you much, or at the bottom of the pack and it won't hurt you much, then Zunino is a guy that could be useful. Which brings us to pitchers, and there's a lot going on at pitchers. I always start with relief pitchers, and I don't see where my notes are. So they're going to be over here. Everyone does a bullpen report, right? Where's my bullpen report? It's not that one. Okay. Atlanta activated Sean Newcomb, who's a middle reliever. Philadelphia activated Jose Alvarado, who immediately got into a fight with somebody. And the LA Dodgers have on the IL David Price. David Price is an interesting guy because he's going to be on they say he's a grade 2 hamstring, but who knows how much true that is. But he could be activated as early as Friday. He's the obvious replacement for the missing Dustin May. But because he happens to be on the IL just at this moment, he's not available. Tony Gonsolin's also not available. So I think that's what they're going to do is they're probably going to give Jimmy Nelson one shot. And if he pitches well, he'll get more than one shot. But if he doesn't pitch well, then David Price is the guy you're going to want there. And that's probably what it's going to be for the rest of the way. Unless Dustin May's MRI comes back very clean and they say it's going to be a short stint. So, all right. The rest of the bullpens this week. Cesar Valdez had 2 saves this week. Blew one on Thursday, was back out on Friday. He's clearly the closer there. Rafael Delis had the only save opportunity in Toronto this week. And Romano pitched twice in the 9th inning in a blowout win and the 8th inning in a blowout loss. Karinchuk still looks good. He got the save on Tuesday, but Class A pitched 2 nights straight. So the next day, Class A got the save. So Class A is still the guy you want in Cleveland. In Detroit, Gregory said he got the one only save last week on Tuesday. He's starting to separate himself from Garcia because Garcia's poor performance, and but so Gregory Soto's ERA is like 3.38, and Garcia's is like 2 points higher. Josh Stelman appears to be the closer in Kansas City after they spread the thing around. They've given Stelman the last 3 save opportunities. In Minnesota, there were no save opportunities this week, but Taylor Rogers seems to be the favorite over Alex Colomé, who's been demoted over poor play. After Presley had converted in Houston, after Presley converted back-to-back saves, Ryan Stanek converted 1, and he's SP eligible, which has some advantages in daily leagues. But he has good numbers, Stanek. 2.19 ERA, 0.57 WHIP. 18 strikeouts in 12.1 innings. He could be helpful for a team. Raisel Iglesias appears to have righted the ship. His last 2 innings have been clean. I know I told you I cut him earlier. It's only because the quality was so high, and it was between him and Jake McGee, and I just tend to believe in McGee a little bit more, and that might be recency bias, and it might be a mistake. But in that league, I'm actually rostering 6 relief pitchers, and I can't afford 7. Somebody's got to go. Lou Trevino got both saves this week. Both save opportunities converted both this week. Kendall Graven in Seattle got the save opportunity on Thursday. Montero got the one on Wednesday, but he blew that save. Graven's going to separate himself. In Miami, Yimi Garcia gave up a walk-off homer to Kyle Schwarber last night, 2 nights ago. That was the 3rd homer that he's allowed in 15 appearances. I was trying to voice what I didn't like about Yimi Garcia because I know he pitched really, really well for the Dodgers, but they never really want to give him more thing. And I talked about how he's blown a lot of saves. His problem is he cannot be the closer because he's only had 1 season in his career where he had a home run ratio of under 2 per 9 innings. And that was 1.92. Right now for this year he's at 3, and that's the real problem. You can be a closer if you have good stuff, can get strikeouts by letting up a hit or 2. Alex Reyes is a dominating closer right now for St. Louis, so much so that I'm ready to give up on Hicks coming back and doing something. Don't get me wrong, I think Hicks will get 3 or 4 saves this year, but the predominant guy is going to be Reyes. But if those hits if the guys are getting on base are getting by walks or by singles, you can let up a couple of those. When you let up home runs, you lose games, and that's what Yimi Garcia does. Yimi Garcia is not going to be the closer at the end of the year. Matter of fact, he may not be the closer at the end of the month. Everybody has this Schwarber home run fresh in their heads. His next time out is going to be very important. If he stumbles in one of his next 2 things, Dylan Floro will be the closer in Miami before the month of May is out. So he's a guy that you speculate on at a cheap price. And lastly, Sam Coonrod got a save on Friday in Philadelphia after Neris had pitched 2 days straight. I bring that up because in my recommendations of relief pitchers, I will sometimes recommend middle relievers, and the 2 middle relievers that I wanted to recommend are Ryan Stanek and Sam Coonrod, who have good ratios, good strikeout rates, will get you a save or 2 here and there, but could balance your lineup if you have space to put in your lineup. But in a shallow league, the big though, how did I miss this one? Lucas Sims for Cincinnati came in, and he was having trouble, so they brought TJ Antone in, who is their best relief pitcher, who closed out the game for it, and he got his first save. And it's only a matter of time where he's the guy who's closing for them. And he's only 41% owned in Yahoo leagues. He could be a lights-out closer with any problem. Joe Stama, who we mentioned, is a very good closer, a guy worth picking up. He's owned at 55%, so he fails that. Then you have Rafael Dolis at 26% and Gregory Soto at 23%. In this group, I think that the guy that you want is TJ Antone. I think that, well, actually, I don't know if I can do that. It's hard to pick the guy who's not closing over the guy who is closing, because saves are saves, and 75% of what you're drafting a closer for is 4 saves. And if the guy is not saving games, he's not going to be as worthwhile. So yeah, it's tough. I really like Anton, but I'm gonna have to recommend Rafael Dolis because he's under 50 and he's got the closer job. Keep a close eye on Anton. In the deeper leagues, that's in the NFBC, anybody's getting more than a save here and there has been rostered. The two things that we noticed, I talked up Dylan Floro. He's a guy that right now you can buy him for $1. Hold on for a couple of weeks, and he's going to get a bunch of saves. The other one, which I don't know if this is going to play out, but Chris Davinsky was part of the mix in Arizona. He has returned from whatever leave he was on, and nobody on that team has pitched so well that they own that position of closer in Arizona. So he's a speculative pick in those deeper leagues. Whenever I say speculative pick in the deeper leagues, there are also people you should watch in the shallow leagues because they can move up the food chain a little bit, but that is just what they are. I feel a little bad about the starting pitcher side because there were such good guys out there to recommend last week, and there aren't as many because those guys all moved up. There are guys that I thought could be real difference makers in pitching last week, and it made me feel really good about recommending them. This week we had the big news was Dustin May came down on a fall through and a fastball in pain. Was placed in the IL almost immediately. His MRI is scheduled for Sunday in Chicago. The strangest thing is, I can remember a time when the Dodgers had so much pitching they didn't know what to do with it, and now they have May, Gonsolin, Price all on the injured reserve. Next up is Jimmy Nelson. Adam Wainwright went to the COVID list. He's been pitching well enough. They should hold on to him. Rich Hill went to the COVID list, but apparently he's come back. The Nationals were able to activate John Lester on Friday. Pitched 5 innings and no run ball with 2 Ks. Chris Paddock, they put on the injury list with undisclosed problems, so who knows what the hell that means. The Orioles were called Dean Kramer on Thursday. Jake Odorizzi has a right pronator muscle strain. We pulled that out. His return is marked for probably mid-May. Strasburg could throw a bullpen mound session this weekend. His return time is supposed to be mid-May, and we're in May now, so mid-May is not that far away. Brady Singer was removed from the second last night with a heel contusion. I don't know anything more about that. The second night before last. 2 guys that are injured that are on their way. Like Framber Valdez of the Astros is way ahead of schedule. He's throwing pitches off the mound. He just needs to face live hitters. He could be back pretty darn quick. If Framber Valdez is available in your leagues, this is the last week you can put a small bid on him and get him because when he comes back, he's going to be somebody everyone's going to jump on. And he's owned less than you would think. I thought I had it marked here somewhere. Framber Valdez. No, I do not. And Eliezer Andrus is also close to returning. He threw a bullpen on Saturday. He's expected to return not this week, but the week following. So you look at these pitchers out here. So in the deep leagues, Kyle Gibson is only at 50% owned, so I'm going to cheat and say he's still available. Because, 50. Massive Bumgarner is 39% owned. Domingo Herman is 45% owned in Yahoo leagues. J Happ is 21% owned. Those are the 4 guys that I'm going to focus on. There are other pitchers in this list that are worth looking at for different reasons, but we'll talk about J Happ as he's got a 2-game week. He's going to go up versus Texas and Detroit. Domingo Herman, in his 2 games since the return, he's pitched 13 innings. He's 2-0 with a 130 area, 9.92 whip. He looks like the guy that was 18-4 a couple years ago after he took some time off for COVID and because he beat his wife. Mad Bum's last 3 starts, he's 3-0 with a 9.53 K per 9, a .47 whip. Pretty good, huh? His first 3 starts, he had an 11.2 ERA with a 2.2 whip. But his fastball in the last 2 games has ticked up a mile and a half. His slider at nearly 3 miles per hour. There's something here. And I know people were worried about players. I'm not going to tell you he's going to be the Mad Bum of old, but he can give you good innings with a reasonable ERA. And in a season where people are worried about innings, he's going to pitch them. So especially if you're looking for innings, that's a guy you should look at. Adam Wainwright's last 2 starts have been extremely good, including the rare 9 innings shutout, complete game loss, letting up 2 home runs to Rhys Hoskins of all people. I'm at 104 already. Wow. Doesn't matter. We're not too far from that. I'm in the last position. Am I not? Other names are in there that aren't the guys that I'm really focused on, but are good enough to play. Taijuan Walker of the... Gotta get him confused with the other guy. I think he's the Mets. Adam Wainwright, Jake Jimenez of the 18% owned, Dylan Cease, and Albert Alzolay. Alzolay, his last outing for the Cubs was about the best in the thing, and he's kind of the upside play. He's only owned in 8% of leagues, but he's a guy that he added that slider last year, and that slider might be his best pitch. So it's rare that somebody who's a 2-pitch pitcher adds a pitch that becomes their best pitch. Now they're 3-pitch pitchers, and there could be something there. I hope to God that it's true, but I'm not going to speculate on it because I'm speculating enough based solely on my love of the Cubs. So of the shorthanded guys, of these guys, Kyle Gibson's number 1 at 50, but that being a cheat, I'm going to say that I'm highly recommending Domingo Germán. That's the guy that I'd go with. But any one of these guys that I named has reasons to like them, and so there might be differences in who's available in your leagues. Those are your names. Gibson, Germán, Happ, Taijuan Walker, Bumgarner, Adam Wainwright, Jake Jimenez, Dylan Cease, and Albert Alzolay, kind of in that order. Maybe Alzolay ahead of Cease at the end. In the deeper leagues, there's not a lot to look at in the deeper leagues, but there's a couple of guys that I find to be interesting. I'm not going to say these are in a league where 450 people are drafted. There's not a lot there. Jacob Rizzi, after getting injured, dropped under 50%. I could see picking him up and holding him because if he's healthy, he's a guy that's going to pitch solid situation. A couple of guys in Tampa Bay, and the problem with Tampa is that they screw with their pitching staff, that you don't know who's going to get what. And by far the most electric of the bunch was Shane McClanahan, who's actually set up to be a 2-star pitcher this week, but who knows how many innings he pitches. Now, I would pick him up to start him this week because I would guess he's going to pitch 4 innings both times, so that's 8 innings. It's like one good game. He's not going to get the win, but in those 8 innings, he might get 11 or 12 strikeouts. He might get lit up like you wouldn't believe, but he's the interesting guy. The other 2 guys are Luis Patino, who's 10% owned, and Josh Fleming, who is 12% owned. Just 10 minutes. Anyway, the Fleming pitched well in his one outing this week. So did Patino. Patino's a highly touted prospect that he got from San Diego. Eric Fetty is owned in 6% of leagues. I did mention John Lester's owned in 0. You see Kikuchi, a lot of people like Kikuchi, and Kikuchi is one of those guys that he's going to have some really tremendous starts for you, and he's going to have some really dogs, and you got to kind of live with both of them. It's going to come out to be an okay pitcher. The guys that I think that people should pay attention to are number 1, Cole Irvin. Cole Irvin is a 367 area with a 1.3 whip, 8.3 Ks per 9. It seems like he was one of those guys on my list of guys that had figured things out throughout the preseason, the spring training, and they have a way of always turning some guy who's not that great into a decent pitcher. Remember, think about Chris Bassett last year. Cole Irvin, by talent, is a better pitcher than Chris Bassett. He's probably going to be this year's Chris Bassett. And the other guy it just seems to be doing a pretty good job of things. And he's is Luis Garcia, the guy that's been filling in for in Houston, the guy that's been filling in for Oda Rizzi. Admittedly, he's only pitching like 5 per game, but if you look back in his minor league numbers, he's a guy that was striking out 13, 14 per 9. And you usually don't get a guy that can help you out in the strikeouts at that level. So I'd recommend the only guy that I'm really truly recommending here for deep leagues is Cole Irvin. But all these guys are interesting enough that Jake Rizzi, but he's injured, so it's not a play for this week. Jake Rizzi, Cole Irvin, but Patino, Fleming, Lester, McClanahan, Kikuchi, Garcia all can be useful, and those are guys that are almost unowned in places. So to get to my recommendations, I'm going to say shell leagues, Domingo Germán, and deeper leagues, Jake Rizzi. If it's for later, for right now, I would pick Cole Irvin. And two-star pitchers this week. I'm not going to go through all the guys that this is something we missed last week, but I'm not going to go through the guys that everyone knows. You're always going to pitch Shane Bieber, right? But guys that have good two-star weeks that might be available in the league is Domingo Herman was the guy that picked. His aren't that great with Houston and Washington, but he is a two-star pitcher this week. Jay Happ gets Texas and Detroit. Jake Junis gets Cleveland and the Chicago White Sox. Kwang Kim of the Cardinals gets the Mets in Colorado, but Colorado is at home. Nick Pivetta gets Detroit versus Baltimore. Shane McClanahan and Shohei Ohtani has 2 starts. Tampa Bay versus Shohei Ohtani is an interesting guy because it seems like he's convincing me as an owner of him that he's a better batter than a pitcher. But I do think he's a really good pitcher. I think this is a week that you start him as a pitcher. It's when he has 2 starts. And I think that the starting pitcher will distract from his hitting a little bit because it's not something he's normally doing. I bet you that maybe in one of those games they actually give him the day off of hitting, have somebody else DH for him. That'd be interesting to think about. But anyway, Shane McClanahan's the cream of the crop in there, but it's Tampa Bay. He's going to pitch very little. It's just I don't think 2020 is his year. 2021 is his year. So those are the guys to look at. So in recapping, I did say I want to talk about one thing before I left. It's like these people say this thing like he's empty average. Average is an important category in your league, and the truth is, it's as much as people say, well, if a guy hits home runs, he's going to get a run and an RBI. But the truth is, the guys that hit the ball in the play are going to get more runs and more RBIs too. And with the average being so low nowadays, a guy that hits 300 can really make. Those guys are going to be more and more important for your team because by being that far ahead of the pack, they can make up for all those guys that haven't been that good at that situation. So, if you have a guy who's hitting 7 home runs but batting .212, you pair him with a Nico Horner or a Colton Wong or a guy hitting at least 285, Rambo Tapia. It keeps your average up, and that average is something. It's a real. It's not only a real stat that we count in fantasy sports, but it's one of the easier ones to make up a little depending on where you're at. You could be in a situation where you look at your team and your team batting average is like 256, 256.3 because they go for digits, and you're in 7th place. But if you were 257, you'd be in 3rd. And then you're talking about a difference there. Like if I can get 4 more hits than that guy in this month, I'm moving up 4 spots. And it can be really egregious in those things. So that's really the talk of all those other things coming up. We're going to have George on at 6:30, and we're going to have today talking about the stuff that George talks about. Then the dugout, the ground table on Monday. Lenny will be back at 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. That's the Lenny Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Andrea on Saturday at around noon. Me on Sunday around noon, and that's the way we get all week covered. I'm sorry for my lack of energy today. Like I said, it's been a little bit of a somber week with passing of a friend. One of the interesting things about that is that league is, like any league has been around for 20 years, you have a little bit of turnover, so there's guys that have come and gone. And with the passing of one of the players, that the message boards that these guys used to haunt that left have all come back to say, hey, it's nice to catch up with these 22 or so players. That's a pretty good thing. But there is no such thing as empty average. It's a real stat. It helps out other things too. And it's a matter of fact is that it's everybody. Home runs are a dime a dozen. I mean, they really are. You can pick up really lousy players that are hitting home runs. You can pick up Rogan Odor, who does what Rogan Odor does for the Yankees. You can pick up Travis Shaw. You can pick up a lot of these guys. They have to give you more than home runs to be worth something. And more often than not, there are a lot more situations where guys hitting 30 home runs and only getting 60 or 70 RBIs because there isn't anybody on base in front of them. And those are the things that help out. You need on your team, in order for JD Martinez to lead the majors in home runs with 46 or whatever, or he not only has to be able to hit home runs, but he has to have enough guys that are hitting on the rest of his team to get him 5-6 at bats in games, so that he has the opportunity to hit those home runs. What's wrong with baseball is the fact that we settled on a situation where we're perfectly happy watching a guy strike out, because he'll hit a home run as well. And don't get me wrong, a home run is one of the most exciting things in sports. Very few things much more are exciting than that. But a good rally is a good rally, and we need to have more players. A team needs to have a mix of players that can get on base and push the batting lineup over and over and over again. And with that, I bid you guys adieu. It's 1:15 p.m. here. I know that Baffert Sorts won the Derby yesterday, but I actually completely missed it because of other things going on in my life. I'll see you all around. It's been fun.